The captain reaches the military officer and asks where he can find the hunter that captured the C-rank vandal. He knows that Suho must have gone through one of the portals. At the same time, Suho and the swordsman that gave him a ride earlier both step through the portal and arrive in the dungeon. Unlike the typical cave-like dungeon, this area is more like a forest. Suho is surprised that traveling through the portal didn't hurt and that the new clothes he's wearing are still intact. His previous 2 trips were very painful and he always arrived naked. The swordsman comments that Suho's new outfit was made from materials from a dungeon. Because of this, it's infused with dimensional energy and isn't destroyed when passing through portals. Suho then comments about the portal they just passed through. Normally, the portal disappears immediately. However, this one is hanging around. The swordsman informs him that it's a door portal. The portal has different doors leading to a total of 38 dungeons. Currently, they're in Dungeon 24. Right after the swordsman is done explaining this, the door disappears. But it will open back up once they clear the dungeon. Suho isn't quite sure what it means to clear a dungeon. Does that mean we need to kill everything in here? He asks. No, you just need to defeat the strongest creature here. Good to know. Suho tells his companion to wait there while he goes off to take on the dungeon's monsters. Before the swordsman can say anything, Suho takes off with an incredible display of speed. But a few seconds after Suho disappears into the forest, the swordsman realizes that although he is very powerful, Suho doesn't have any tracking skills. And if he can't find the door in time after clearing the dungeon, Suho will be trapped here forever. The swordsman runs after Suho to make sure this doesn't happen. Meanwhile, the captain is talking to the military and they inform him that door 24 was just closed. The captain realizes that he just missed Suho. Back in the forest dungeon, a group of goblins is standing around menacingly. Before they know what's happening, they're under attack by Suho and are quickly and brutally defeated. Suho picks up one of the goblins' blades and uses it to cut their bloodstone hearts out. These will fetch a good price at the returnee control department. He also takes a moment to check his stats and is pleased to see that he's gaining performance points and is leveling up. The swordsman hasn't caught up to Suho yet, but he has found scores of dead goblins that Suho left behind. The swordsman uses his tracking skill to locate Suho and runs after him once he determines his general area. Meanwhile, after defeating more goblins, Suho checks his status once more. He's earned several more performance points and now has the option to buy skills. For now, he chooses to purchase the beast taming skill. Just then, several more goblins leap out at Suho from the trees and he effortlessly crushes them. His quick battle with these goblins has earned him a few more points and leveled him up again. With his additional points, he chooses to purchase the tree spirit summoning skill. Suho activates his summoning skill and a small green fairy appears in front of him. He instructs her to find the remaining goblins and she quickly flutters off into the forest. As she flies, the fairy transfers information directly into Suho's mind. Suho decides to spend his remaining points to purchase the search and track skills. He tests out his new skills to get an understanding of them. While using his tracking skill, he locates something that isn't a goblin and runs after it. When Suho arrives, he sees a creature on top of the swordsman pointing a blade at him. The swordsman is resisting, however he's obviously losing the struggle. Suho asks what the swordsman is doing since he told him he would hunt alone. The swordsman tries to explain the situation and asks Suho for help to defeat the monster. Suho jumps on the monster, but it's able to pull its shield out in time to defend itself. The monster crouches and assumes a fighting stance with its sword and shield at the ready. However, Suho is way too fast. He closes the gap between them in an instant and kicks the monster in the head. The monster crashes into a large boulder and while it's dazed, Suho leaps in the air and lands on top of its chest with his blade. After defeating the most powerful monster in the dungeon, Suho gains more points and levels up again. As the swordsman looks on in shock, Suho glances at him and asks if the door is going to open now. "Yeah, it should open soon," responds the swordsman. A few minutes later, Suho and his companion return through the portal and are noticed by the soldiers. They run to get the captain since he was looking for Suho earlier. The swordsman decides to rejoin his crew and bids him farewell. Suho thanks him for his help and tells him that he'll leave the clothes in the stockroom. As Suho leaves the stockroom wearing his old clothes, he's met by the captain who'd been looking for him. The man introduces himself as Manhwa Khan, a captain of the Shilla Guild, and he asks to speak with Suho. Suho and the captain go to a nearby cafe, and the captain quickly asks him to join their guild. Suho has no intention of joining anyone's guild and passes on the offer. This irritates the captain. However, he tries again and mentions that their guild is one of the top 4 in existence and that they'll provide Suho with top service. Suho says that it's nothing personal, but he's just not the type to work under someone else's supervision. Suho returns to his brother's apartment and relaxes on the roof. However, the landlady arrives to hang laundry and he decides to help her. The landlady questions him as to whether he really is the older brother of Junho because he looks so much younger than him. He assures her that he really is the elder brother, and she comments that all kinds of bizarre things have been happening since the day of the catastrophe, so she shouldn't be shocked at him looking so young. Just then Junho and his son return and find Suho on the roof. Now that Junho has arrived, Sunho gives him an envelope containing $50,000 to pay his debts. Junho doesn't know how he can ever repay his brother for this, but Suho brushes it off and tells him to just go pay off the debt. As Junho leaves to pay the debt, Suho and his nephew, Jianu, are playing on the roof with the white puppy. Suho asks what they should name the dog and they decide on Beku. Later that day, Junho returns but he's beaten and bloody. Suho and Jianu run to him to find out what happened. Across the city in a penthouse, a gang of men in black suits is playing poker and talking about the upcoming fighting championship. When suddenly someone bangs loudly on their door. The door opens and one of the henchmen warns the boss that there's a big problem, but before he can say anything else, he's grabbed and thrown fully into the room. In the dark doorway we can see glowing blue eyes and a powerful aura radiating into the room. The gang of men pull their weapons and threaten to attack the hidden figure in the doorway. Suho steps into the room and grabs a metal storage cabinet with one hand. He effortlessly lifts it above his head and throws it at the gangsters. The windows then shatter, causing glass shards to go flying everywhere, cutting up the men. With all of his henchmen taken down, the leader begins to sweat and tremble with fear. Suho walks over the bodies of the fallen henchmen and approaches the leader. He then kicks the table, pinning the leader's legs. "Who are you?" asks the gang leader. "Someone here to pay off Junho's debt," replies Suho. The leader tells Suho that it's not legal for returnees to attack regular humans. In response, Suho slaps the gang leader across the face several times, causing him to lose quite a few teeth. Suho continues to smack him back and forth until he cries and begs to settle Junho's loan. The gang makes it clear that Junho's loan is completely settled, and Suho tells them if he ever sees them again he'll put an end to them permanently. However, once Suho leaves, the gang leader curses him. He also has connections to powerful people and will make sure that Suho pays for what he did to him. Later that night, the captain returns to his guild and informs the guild's deputy that Suho is an epic new hunter that they have to get hold of. The deputy takes a look at Suho's info and is skeptical because he's an F rank that just registered as a returnee. However, the captain tells him to pull up Suho's file. Access is denied, which shocks both the captain and guild deputy. But that doesn't stop them. The deputy is able to hack into the system and gain access to Suho's file. Both the captain and deputy are amazed by Suho's record and wonder why they put a lock on his file. The fact that Suho is so powerful, isn't part of a guild, and has been missing for 10 years makes the deputy think something is weird about the situation. He theorizes that Suho is a government agent and tells the captain to forget about trying to recruit him. The captain agrees but asks the deputy to keep an eye on Suho anyway. Suho arrives at the hospital to visit his brother and brings a lot of food with him. Junho is feeling much better and will have his bandages removed tomorrow. Junho questions Suho about the hunter exam and says it would be nice if he could join a guild once he passes. Suho remembers that he was once king of the forest and says it would be difficult to work under a boss after his experience in the other world. Suho has no intention of joining a guild and tells Junho that he plans on creating his own guild instead. Back at the Returnee Control Department, the director questions Suyeon about what's going on with her. She's been distracted lately, and this has been showing in her work. It was pure luck that the portals opening in her districts didn't let monsters through. Suyeon doesn't know what's going on with her but says that she just can't seem to concentrate lately. The director doesn't want to hear any excuses and gives Suyeon her next assignment. She's going to be in charge of one of the groups for the upcoming hunter examination. She becomes angry because she was just getting ready to relax, but the department is dispatching her again. The director yells at her to not take her anger out on the applicants because they're short on hunters. At another area of the Returnee Control Department, a group of potential hunters are gathered for the hunter exam. One of the exam takers is live streaming the experience as the inspectors walk through the doors. Since filming isn't allowed, he quickly tells his viewers he's signing off. Suho appears behind him and is curious about what he's doing and who he's talking to, which merely irritates the streamer. The chief inspector takes the stage and welcomes everyone to the hunter exam, which will take place over the next 3 days. There are 21 inspectors in total, and the exam takers will be randomly split among them. The inspectors will oversee their groups and determine who passes and who fails. While everyone is hoping for an easy inspector, the live streamer, whose name is Dong Soo-han, is assigned to Inspector 15. Suho is also assigned to Inspector 15. As they approach their assigned group, they see that their inspector is the blonde woman, Suyeon. The exam takers are then sent to a designated room to wait for the next announcement. In the locker room, Dong-soo is nervous about being assigned to the blonde woman's group. However, Suho teases him about being so scared. Dong-soo insists that there's good reason to be afraid of the blonde, but Suho says that if they fail, it'll be their own fault and not the inspectors. Dong-soo believes that Suho is simply trying to put him down, and tells him to watch his mouth. Suho responds that if he has a problem with the way he talks, they can fight it out. Dong-soo accepts the challenge. Both Suho and Dong-soo find a ring to fight in, and the rest of Group 15 watches from the corners. Dong-soo comments that Suho picked a fight with the wrong guy, as he's a trained boxer. Suho simply smiles in anticipation. The boxer runs towards Suho in a fighting stance and throws a punch at Suho's face, but before it can land, Instructor Suyeon arrives and puts an end to it. She angrily yells at everyone to return to the room. Everyone leaves except Dong-soo and Suho, who remain in the ring. Instructor Suyeon says that one of them will have to pay for this. Whoever loses the fight will be booted from the exam. Dong-soo can't believe how ridiculous this situation is, but he resumes his fighting stance and turns to Suho. "You brought this on yourself, so don't blame me for what's about to happen." The boxer lunges at Suho with his fist cocked back, but before he can do anything else, Suho closes the distance and lands a solid punch directly on Dong-soo's jaw. Dong-soo drops like a rag doll as Suho stands smiling at Suyeon. She looks at Suho with trepidation and thinks the reason he makes her so nervous is that he must be an irregular returnee. Suho tells her to step into the ring if she wants to fight him too. This statement irritates Suyeon even further, and Suho is quick to add that if he wins, Dong-soo gets to stay and take the exam. Suyeon reaches for her sword and enters the ring. "You're an irregular, aren't you?" she asks him. He asks her what that is, but she quickly runs to attack him and responds that she'll explain it if he's still alive after the fight. Suyeon throws a punch which Suho easily brushes aside. She then pivots to throw another punch, but Suho blocks it again. Suyeon then throws a flurry of punches as Suho assumes a defensive position. She rains punches on Suho for several seconds and ends by kneeing him in the face before continuing with a new barrage of punches. She then leaps at him and says that in addition to letting Dong-soo remain, she'll grant Suho another request if he can beat her. After saying this, she lands a flip kick directly on Suho's chin. Although she's been pummeling him for several minutes, she knows that something is off. Suho comments that she's pretty strong, and it's then that she realizes he isn't even fazed by her attacks. In response, Suyeon throws a serious kick charged with electrical energy, but Suho easily dodges. Soo-young then throws a series of powerful punches and kicks at Suho, but he blocks and dodges each of them. For the first time since the match began, Suho throws a punch which would have landed if Soo-young didn't put up a shield just in time. Just as she is beginning to recover from the blow, Suho charges at her for an attack. It's then that Soo-young knows for certain that he's an irregular. She holds her hand up and tells him that's enough. "You win," she says. Since the ring isn't big enough for them to fight using their real skills, they'll continue the fight when they have more space. "Tell me what you want." "A deal's a deal," she says. Suho is impressed by her strength and he asks her to make a baby with him. In response, she slaps him in the face. At the same time, Dong-soo wakes up wondering how he ended up on the floor. Soo-young angrily storms off as Dong-soo is questioning if he got knocked out with one punch. Because of his defeat, Dong-soo is expecting to be kicked out of the exam. Suho tells Dong-soo not to worry. The blonde instructor agreed to let him remain in the exam. Dong-soo concludes that Suho let the instructor slap him in exchange for letting Dong-soo continue with the exam. His feelings towards Suho immediately change. "That's a real bro," he thinks to himself as he's overcome with emotion. Over the intercom, the chief inspector summons Suho to his room. Unbeknownst to Suho, the chief was watching his match with Soo-young and couldn't believe what he saw. Suho arrives at the chief's office a few minutes later and the chief asks Suho if he's an irregular returnee. There's no way an F rank should have been able to stand against a powerful hunter like Soo-young. However, Suho has no idea what an irregular is. The chief inspector quickly explains that most people that disappeared on the day of the catastrophe were transported to dungeons, and that they gained dimensional energy by killing monsters there before they returned to Earth. These people are considered normal hunters. But irregular hunters were transported to a completely new planet instead of a dungeon. The chief then explains about these planets. There are 3 known planets that are connected to Earth by something called bridge portals. The first planet is called Aruka. The majority of the population of Aruka are elves and dwarves. The Earth has a good relationship with them and engages in trade and cultural exchange. The second planet is called Hades. There are centralized tribes of people and monsters that live on this planet. The 2 groups are at constant war. When the portal is connected to an area where the human tribes live, the Earth can trade with them. However, if the portal is in monster territory, they must go to war. The last planet is called Midder. Ogres and giants live there and both groups are hostile to the Earth. So when the bridge portal opens to Midder, the only result is war. Returnees that have learned skills from those planets are called irregulars because it's difficult to rank their combat abilities. Unlike returnees from dungeons, whose skills are easy to rank. Suho isn't sure he understands all of this, but he says he's not from any of those planets. The chief inspector questions which planet Suho is from, and Suho tells him that he was running with wolves for 1,000 years in a forest. Suho is dismissed, and the chief calls a new inspector into his office. He tells this new inspector that Soo-young took off, so the chief wants him to replace her as the leader of Group 15. He also tells the inspector to keep a close eye on Suho. Back in the locker room, Suho and his other group members are called to the track. Their new inspector introduces himself, which causes them to wonder where the blonde woman is. The new inspector instructs them that to pass, they'll need to run 100 meters in under 9 seconds. Several of the examinees fail the challenge, however Dong-soo barely passes. But when it's Suho's turn, he shocks everyone by completing the run in just over 2 seconds. The chief inspector informs Captain Miso Kim at the returnee control department about Suho's abilities. Miso watches Suho's performance and realizes that he's not just a delusional F-ranked hunter. All those stories he told the doctor were true. Based on his abilities, Miso theorizes that he might be a returnee from a 4th new planet. She immediately gives the order to block any reporters from interviewing him. Although Captain Miso wants to block the press from getting to Suho, she's too late as articles have already been published about him. As Suho and Dong-soo are on their way to get lunch, several reporters with cameras rush at him to ask questions. However, security guards rush in to separate the reporters from Suho. Meanwhile in her office, Miso contemplates what to do about Suho. If he's really an irregular from an unknown fourth planet, she needs to keep him in Korea so that they will be at the forefront of this new development. Back in the cafeteria, the exam takers are commenting about how the reporters are swarming around because of Suho. And Donsu regrets not streaming their fight because of how popular Suho is now. After lunch, they return to the locker room, which is empty. Donsu remarks that they must have been the only ones in their group to pass the exam. This isn't good because the next portion of the exam is a dungeon raid. If it's just the two of them left in the group, it'll be difficult. But maybe they'll reassign people from other teams, wonders Donsu. Suho isn't worried and calmly remarks that he can handle it on his own. Suho then asks Donsu what he was doing with his phone earlier. Donsu explains to him what streaming is and shows him his videos and subscribers. He also shows him other popular channels about food. Donsu promises that he can hook him up with other streamers so that he can join their stream and enjoy good food with them. Suho starts to like Donsu at hearing that and invites him to join his clan. Donsu is surprised that Suho isn't going to join an established guild. But he quickly realizes that this is a golden opportunity. If he joins with Suho, he'll be partnered with an extremely popular hunter and be able to make videos of them clearing dungeons. This is the break he's been waiting for. Donsu agrees to join Suho's guild but mentions that they need at least 3 hunters for their guild to be authorized. Just then a bald monk wearing red robes enters the room. He introduces himself as Myeongjin, an examinee that's been assigned to their group. A few moments later, all the examinees are called to change into their battle gear and gather for the next portion of the exam. In the briefing room, the chief inspector explains to them that they'll be entering a level 1 dungeon that's being managed by the Phoenix Guild. Since there are too many dungeons for the government to manage by itself, hunter guilds are contracted to manage dungeons and the surrounding land as well. This setup is one of the ways that guilds make money. At hearing this, Suho becomes more interested in starting a guild and controlling his own territory. The briefing continues and the chief explains that the dungeon is a labyrinth, which makes it the lowest difficulty. However, because it's a labyrinth, it's easy to get lost there. Donsu regrets not having the search skill to make this test easier. However, Suho informs him that he has acquired the search skill a while ago. This shocks Donsu as Suho doesn't even have a hunter's license yet and it costs a load of money to purchase that skill book. At the dungeon site, the group's supervisor explains that he'll go with them to observe. But when they enter the dungeon they should act as if he's not there. He also tells them to keep in mind that even if their team clears the dungeon, individual examinees could still lose if they don't get enough points. This makes Donsu nervous about his chances, but he plays it off as if he's not scared. The group is cleared to enter the dungeon and once they're inside, they find themselves in a dark cave. "Bro, watch your surroundings," yells Donsu. But he quickly covers his mouth as he realizes that yelling could easily attract monsters. In fact, he knows he'll get a point deducted for his error. As Donsu's yell echoes around the cave, a skeleton monster lunges at Suho out of the shadows. In response, he quickly grabs the skeleton by the skull and smashes it to pieces. Donsu is pleased and says, "What a great plan, bro. I lure the monster out by making noise and you take it down while it's distracted." Donsu then runs after Suho to ask him about his search skill, but steps on a booby trap which causes several arrows to rain down from the ceiling. This time, the monk will deal with the threat. He quickly grabs his staff and blocks every arrow with incredible skill. Donsu is amazed by the monk's abilities but mistakenly steps on yet another booby trap. This time a trap door opens in the floor, swallowing Suho, Donsu, and the monk. As they fall, the trap door quickly closes over them. They find themselves in a dark hallway and they can hear the screeches and rumbling of monsters coming from up ahead. Suho is glad to hear the monsters rushing towards them. "This way, we won't have to go searching for them," he says. Before anyone can respond, Suho leaps up and kicks at the trap door. With a single kick, he shatters the roof, which creates an opening for them to return. "Hey monk, you're a decent guy," says Suho. "You want to join my clan?" Before the monk can respond, Suho uses his search skill to locate all the booby traps in the hallway. He then runs towards the monsters with tremendous speed. As Suho is running, the monk climbs out of the hole and extends his staff so that Dongsu can climb up as well. When Dongsu reaches the top, they find a pile of screeching skeleton monsters. The monsters were destroyed by Suho's triggering of the booby traps. Suho appears and instructs his group mates to take care of the surviving monsters and follow him. "This dude is off the chain," remarks Dongsu as both he and the monk punch and smash their way through the remaining skeletons. Their group instructor stands silently and concludes that Suho is using the booby traps to help defeat the monsters super fast. Just then a skeleton starts crawling towards Suho from the ceiling, but before it can reach him the monk throws his staff and hits it in the neck. Suho then jumps up and hits it with a spinning kick which breaks it into several pieces. The battle between the group and the skeletons ends shortly after that. Back at the returnee control department, the observers tell the chief that one of the teams is returning from the dungeon. "What? It's only been 30 minutes. Normally, it takes 5 hours to clear this dungeon. Was there some kind of accident? Which group is it?" "It's group 15, and all their vitals are normal. Nothing seems to be wrong with them," responds the observer. Just then, the chief gets a phone call from Suho's group supervisor. "What's going on?" asks the chief. "Why is your team returning so early?" "Mission accomplished, sir," responds the supervisor. The chief can't believe what he's hearing, but the group supervisor tells him that he can see everything on the video recording he made. After leaving the dungeon, Suho and his group return to his brother's apartment. While there, Dongsu starts streaming again to all of his followers. He takes the opportunity to introduce his subscribers to Suho's clan, which for the moment just consists of Suho, Dongsu, and the monk named Myeongjin. A little while later, Junho grabs his truck and calls to Suho and the group. "We're all set," he yells out. The group jumps in the truck and head off to tackle Suho clan's first dungeon quest. As they arrive at the dungeon, the sky grows dark with a stream of flying bats. "This is a bat dungeon," comments Dongsu. "Bro, do you have any long-range skills?" "Nope," responds Suho. "In that case, leave it to me," says the monk. He then begins to beat a small wooden drum and chant. In response, the bats begin to fly towards them all at once. But this is exactly what the monk wanted. Just as they reach him, he spins his staff and creates a wheel of flames. As all the small bats fall to the ground, a giant-sized bat appears. "It must be the boss," says Dongsu. Suddenly, the bat is cut in half as Suho slashes his sword in a downward motion. "Mission cleared," shouts Dongsu. Back at the returnee control department, an employee is reporting to Miso Kim about Suho clan. He informs her about the clan's whereabouts, and their progress with their dungeon quests. At this rate, they could go through 20 dungeons a day. Miso has the media under control, but the fact that Suho clan has a streamer in the group is making it impossible to control the information about Suho. Their videos are extremely popular, but they have to do something about it. Captain Miso needs to get the situation under control, but the situation is delicate. Korea already had one SS-ranked irregular hunter named Seong-gu Lee. However, he defected and went to Japan. He now goes under the name of Hiro Okita. If the government is too aggressive approaching Suho, they're afraid they might push him away to Japan as well. To deal with this, Miso decides she'll go and speak to Suho herself. Suho, Junho and Dongsu are hanging out in a cafe. The monk took the day off and is in Seoul with a few of his monk friends. Junho comments that they should take the day off as well. Suho clan is qualified for a level update and they've made about $140,000 in the past 3 days, so they're doing great. Dongsu is excited because the level up means they can move on to level 2 dungeons, which means they can make even more money. Suho has plenty of money, the clan is doing well and he's purchased several skills. His new skill even allows him to see everyone's stats. He notices that Dongsu and his puppy, Baeku, are awakened and have status information. However, The landlady and his brother don't have any stats because they haven't absorbed any dimensional energy and are not awakened. Suho gets an idea and asks his brother about his truck. "Aren't you tired of having to fix it?" "Yeah," responds Junho. "How about we go buy a new one," says Suho. The brothers go to a truck dealer and buy a top-of-the-line truck. It's a dream vehicle for hunters. It runs on bloodstones and costs $80,000. Suho decides to buy it and pay full cash. Suho, Junho, and the white puppy are riding in the new truck in a closed district. Junho is curious about what they're doing and asks what the plan is. Suho responds that they're going to awaken Junho today. While most awakened people were transported to dungeons or, in rare cases, other planets, anybody can be awakened if they kill monsters and take their dimensional energy. Today Junho will kill his first monster. They park the truck in an abandoned area and Baku growls at unseen enemies. Suho smiles in anticipation because he can smell the stench of goblins. However, Junho sweats with nervousness. Suho gets out of the truck and tells his brother to wait there with Baku. After a while, Junho starts to get nervous because Suho has been gone for 30 minutes already and a storm is approaching. Baku begins to growl again. A few moments later, a large, ugly goblin face slams against the truck window. "Oh my god," shouts Junho. However, the goblin falls, leaving a trail of blood on the window. Suho then opens the driver's side door and tells his brother to get out. The goblin that's on the ground is still alive and screeches at the brothers. Suho then gives his brother a knife and instructs him to finish off the goblin. Junho doesn't want to do this and questions if he really needs to be awakened. Suho tells him that he can't survive if he's weak. "Hurry up and kill it," he instructs. Junho hesitates, so Suho tells Baku to attack. The little dog runs at the goblin and bites it, but he is too small to do any real damage. The goblin grabs Baku by the head. Suho tells his brother that if he doesn't kill the goblin, the little dog will die. "Please, Suho," says Junho quietly. "Kill it," shouts Suho as his brother trembles in fear. Be sure to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.